focusing on economic inequality, do you think he, having run against him, has the credibility to brand what he's doing, the Republican Party is doing in that way? Does the party do someone else?
He'll have, I'm sure, a terrific message, and my job here today is not to criticize Mitt Romney. It's to try to rally the troops. Is that applause that I just heard? See, they're agreeing with me as well. I can give you a little bit of news about Mitt. Most of you know he and Jeff had a private meeting in Utah. He was so proud. It was on the front page of the New York Times. And they called me late Thursday night after they'd met and told me that both of them were dropping out and throwing their support to me. So I wanted to give you that so you could put that in the Sunday paper tomorrow.
Governor, you have an Iowa caucus victory under your belt already. If you decide to run again, are the Iowa caucuses an asset to you, having a roadmap to victory already, or more of a liability because you've already won once and you'd be expected to win again, in theory?
It's an asset in the sense that I understand the process, and I feel like I have a little bit of understanding of the nature of the Iowa electorate. Been to every one of the 99 counties when I was running back in 2007 and 2008. And I met a lot of people in Iowa who'd never been to all the counties, so I told them about the rest of the state so they would know. But I have no presumptions that coming back to Iowa means that there's an automatic victory. Iowa people are too politically sophisticated for that. They're the kind of people that make you prove yourself every time you show up. And so any illusion that I just come in and do the victory lap is simply not true. It's going right back to pizza ranch after pizza ranch all over Iowa.
A quick question on gay marriage. You talked recently about if the Supreme Court rules that it's legal nationally, states could potentially ignore it or rebel against it somehow. I was wondering if you could elaborate a little on how that would work. Do you mean like literally refuse to issue marriage licenses? Or?
Well, I've never used the words rebel or ignore. Here's what I said. I said the three branches of government. I learned that in ninth grade civics. I think a lot of people must have missed that course. And three branches that are all equal mean just that. They're equal branches. A lot of people are really upset with Obama for unilaterally using the executive branch as if he can ignore the other two. There's no such thing in the Constitution as judicial supremacy, where the courts make a ruling and it becomes, quote, the law of the land by the mere ruling itself. A great example of that is 1857, the Dred Scott decision, in which the Supreme Court, in one of its most horrendous decisions, and they've had many that were wrong, but this is one that probably no one would argue with, said that people who were black weren't fully human. Now, Abraham Lincoln said he wasn't going to abide by that. Nobody argues that Abraham Lincoln should have abided with the Dred Scott decision. I think we recognize that he had the courage to realize that he didn't have to enforce something that was morally wrong. And it kind of goes in the same vein as if you read the letters from the Birmingham jail that Martin Luther King wrote based on Augustine's teaching, that there are laws that sometimes man passes that are not just laws. And I'm just saying in a general way, and that's all I did. I think people have taken to writing things for me that I never said.
So just to make sure it's not vague here,
okay.
If you were still Arkansas governor, this ruling came down, would you be comfortable issuing marriage licenses, or would you order your staff not to do that?
Well, in Arkansas, a judge did in fact rule. He was a Pulaski County Circuit Court judge, and on a Friday afternoon he issued a ruling. Now, he issued a ruling that invalidated a constitutional amendment that had been passed by 70% of the voters in 2004, back when I was governor. If I had still been governor, I think I would have done something differently than what happened, because the next Saturday morning, the next day, people were issuing marriage licenses in counties that weren't even open on Saturdays. My question is, by whose authority did that happen? When the Supreme Court had a ruling on school funding in 2002, during my tenure, and they ruled that Arkansas school funding was both inequitable and inadequate. The first thing that had to happen was I met with the legislature and we decided, was the court right? And I agreed the court was right, that we were unconstitutional and out of compliance. So I called a special session. We went into a regular session in January of 2003. It was a brutal session. because dealing with school finance means dealing with a lot of very touchy issues. But we took it on. We passed legislation, I signed it, and my Department of Education enforced it. But the day after the Supreme Court ruling came down in December of 2002, the next day we didn't start writing checks to the school districts that were different than they had been before. All I'm saying is that there needs to be a process, a constitutional process by which we change our laws, and it involves all three branches of government and not just one.
Governor Huckabee.
Do you consider yourself a member of the Tea Party?
I would be very comfortable being called that. I think I was Tea Party before there was a Tea Party. I mean,
Even
if people go back
with
to
your
listen,
record on spending is at odds in some ways.
in what way? My record on spending was pretty darn good. I mean, state government grew 0.5%. Sometimes when people look at my record as governor, they'll take this template, and it's based on a very different template that's applied to other states. In Arkansas, state employees, for example, consider all the people who have anything to do with the state pension plan or the state payroll, including part-time college professors. It includes the people that work in the legislative branch who I had nothing to do with hiring or firing or controlling the number of. If you look at the state employees who are under the control of the executive branch, there was very little growth, and most of that was in like the prison system, where the prison population almost doubled over the course of 10.5 years. So I don't think I have to fear anything from honest people who look at the record and compare the same thing to the same thing.
Okay.
Governor Huckabee,
Okay, I'll let
one
you
more.
have a follow-up. Okay.
As you know, you campaigned all across Iowa in 2008.
I do know
You
that.
won
Yes, I
here. Since you won here, you went on to a lucrative job at Fox News, and you have built a beautiful home in Florida. Are you still the same down-to-earth person today that you were in 2008? And do you think voters will believe you when you tell them that?
I don't know why I would be any other person than the person I've been. I mean, yeah, I'm the same person, sure. Did I make a little more money over the past few years than I made before? Oh yeah, and I'm not ashamed of that either. I'm doggone happy about it. For one thing, I finally caught up and replenished the retirement account in my annuity that I had cashed in to run the last time. Not many people did that. Not many people gave up their entire income to run before. And
you do know
a few
what
weeks
that's...
ago, I walked away from a pretty darn good paycheck to come back into the fray.
Governor- Governor
Let me
Huckabee.
give some other
Yeah,
people, yes.
Governor Huckabee, Common Core has a chance to really be a big issue in this race, and you had said that I hate what Common Core has become.
Yes.
What did you like before?
But the only thing I liked was when it was a state-controlled, specifically directed standard of two things, language arts and math, which was the outgrowth of the Achieve movement back in the mid-90s that a number of people were involved in, and expressly to keep the federal fingers off of education. I've been very clear that I'm utterly opposed to what Common Core is. I say it again in my book. I've said it on television. I've said it on radio. I've written about it repeatedly. And I still have people come and say, you know, Mike Huckabee supports Common Core. I don't know how else I can say it. The Common Core is a disaster. It should be killed off. But states should not abandon high education standards. And certainly conservatives should never abandon high education standards. But they should not embrace Common Core because it has become federally controlled in terms of funding that's tied to it, data collection, getting into issues of curriculum, which it was never supposed to do. And for all those reasons, I don't know of anyone who really loves it that much anymore. In fact, I find this interesting. Liberals hate it as much as conservatives do.
Right. Some experts have, even on the validation committee, have actually looked at the actual content of the standards and have a problem with that. Should states just totally redo it rather than try to rebrand it?
Oh, I think each state has to take a look at it. Look, education should always be at the most local level. And if a state's constitution leaves that at the local school board, that's where it should be. If it's the state, then the state should do it. But it should never be a federal issue. And ultimately, education decisions, and this is what I've said repeatedly, so let me say it one more time, it ought to be a mom and dad decision. It ought not to be a government decision.
Just one more question.
Governor Huckabee,
Yes,
you've gotten a lot of flack for recent comments that you made about Beyonce.
I've gotten a lot of flack about a lot of things, including that one, but yes, I did get a lot of flack.
But do you regret making those comments, and should voters expect more of that sort of cultural commentary should you run in 2016?
Well, if people read the half page of the 272-page book in which I discuss that, I don't think they'll be that alarmed at what I said. I found it interesting, in fact, Casey, I think you were there with Mika Brzezinski on MSNBC. I don't think anybody would say Mika is a Tea Party advocate, but Mika agreed with me. And I found that kind of refreshing. Why? Because she's a mother. I think she actually read what I said. Most people who are reacting to the headlines that are in the press rather than to the actual text of the book. So I would just say to people, read the book. That'll help sales. Read the book. It's half a page of 272 pages. And I'll give you a little background here. When you write a book, this was my 12th, so it's something I have a little experience with. You get finished with it, and before you go out and do the media tour, you go through and you say, okay, what am I likely to be challenged on? What are going to be the issues that will be controversial that I really need to be prepared for? I had 6 or 7 of those. That was not even on the list. I was somewhat amazed that it became a point of controversy.
Thank you, guys. Is Tom Brady telling